So I was recently doing some reading on the flatearthsociety.org, as you do, on their Flat Earth Wiki, aka The Few. And I found an article titled Burden of Proof, which intrigued me. When I opened it up, I noticed it was a short and simple Q&A style article, with the question being framed as though it were being asked by a round earther to a flat earther. Isn't the burden of proof on you to prove it? In other words, isn't it your job as a flat earther to prove that the earth is flat? It's a valid question, I suppose, and I assumed it would be a hearty yes, seeing as flat earthers have put out such an abundance of proofs, experiments, observations, and evidences that ostensibly point to a flat earth. Right? Well, according to this Flat Earth Society article, the answer is actually no. Hello there, and welcome back to the Majestic Masiakasaurus YouTube channel. Delighted to have you here. My name is Milo, and on this channel, to put it simply, I examine bad science, and dig deep to really examine whether these theories actually hold any scientific validity. Today we're back on Flat Earth, and we'll even expand a little bit for this channel, talking not only about the science, but also some more general topics on critical thinking, including the burden of proof and what really even is skepticism. Anyway, I'm super excited, so let's just jump right in. So, isn't the burden of proof on you, the flat earther, to prove it? No. You're the one claiming that NASA can send men to the moon, robots to Mars, and spaceships into the solar system. We're not claiming those things. Okay, fair enough. Flat earthers don't claim those things, so they don't have to prove them, obviously. Though I think we can begin to piece together the core of the problem here already. What does it really mean to have the burden of proof? The burden of proof falls on anyone who makes an active claim. For example, I think the Earth is round. That's an active claim, and it now falls on me to prove to you why I think that. A skeptic, someone who's not convinced of my argument, doesn't really have that same burden of proof. Though if you're truly skeptical, once you're not convinced by my argument, you don't immediately jump to believe that the opposite must be true. Instead, you're simply lacking any active belief in a particular shape of the Earth, in which case it then falls back on me to show you why I'm right. However, this all changes the moment you become a flat earther, because you now too are making an active claim that the Earth is not round and instead is a flat disk. So yes, now both you and I have the burden of proof to demonstrate the validity of our oppositional, yet both active claims. So, flat earthers, the burden of proof is also on you. Then they throw in this seemingly random paragraph about the zetetic philosophy.
A fundamental tenet to the zetetic philosophy is to search, to examine, to proceed only by inquiry, to take nothing for granted but to trace phenomena to their immediate and demonstrable causes. Skepticism is a philosophy of skepticism against the fantastic and unobservable.
At first glance, I'm all for this. A philosophy of skepticism against the fantastic and unobservable. Perfect! Skepticism is one of the most underrated values ever, and the first reaction one should have when confronted with the unobservable, fantastic, or supernatural should default be skepticism. However, we are not talking about the unobservable or fantastic, we're talking about the shape of the planet. Seriously, whether it's the sun rising and setting, a boat going down on the horizon, or literally photographs from space, this is very observable. Also, this becomes even crazier when you remember that the flat earther catchphrase is, get out there, look around, and make your own observations. Then combine that with this statement, take nothing for granted. Well, I hate to burst your bubble, but relying solely on your observations and the way you see the world is making a huge assumption that the way you observe the world is the way the world actually is. Unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately, that is not the case. The way our brains take in the information provided to us by our senses to reconstruct the way that we see the world is not actually a very accurate depiction of reality. As a very basic example, take a look at this image. Which of the two bolded lines is longer? Clearly the one that's farther away, right? Well, as you may have expected if you've seen anything like this before, they're exactly the same length. If you don't believe me, go ahead and pause the video and measure them both. They are indeed the same. This is called the Ponzo Illusion, and it's one of my favorite optical illusions, first just because it works so well, but also because it reveals that the way we see the world is based on how it is useful for us to see it, not necessarily how it actually is. The linear perspective cues of the receding walls tell our minds that the line on the right is farther away and thus should be smaller. Then, because we conceptually know that it represents the whole height of the wall, our minds actually see it as taller than the one on the left, which we know to only represent a third of that height. This is extremely useful in real life, but isn't always reliable, as this illusion shows.
You're the one making all of these fantastic claims. You're the one claiming that spaceships exist, government contractors can land men on the moon, send robots to Mars, and that we can do all of these amazing, never-before-done things.
Well, sure, but we can and do prove them, just like you need to prove your claims. And if you'd like a short summary of a few proofs for Earth's roundness, as most of what I do here is simply showing you why it's not flat, then I'll leave a link in the description for a great minute physics video that you should check out. Also, why does it matter that these are never before done things? Literally everything was never before done until it was done. And also, none of these are really fantastic claims. Sure, out of context, each of these things seems pretty crazy, but humanity has been getting better and better at this sort of thing for hundreds of years as our understanding of science has grown, ever since the 3rd century BC, when Hellenistic astronomers proved that the Earth is spherical. I mean, come on! If you've seen any other videos of mine, I hope you have a pretty good grasp of the argument from ignorance by now, but here's another really good example. Just because the Flat Earth Society has absolutely no idea how scientists can do all these amazing things, doesn't mean they can just deem them all fantastical and call it a day. Again, just because you don't know how something works, doesn't mean it doesn't work. As is sort of becoming my tagline now, it's not magic, it's science.
The burden of proof is on you to prove these things to us. You're the one making the claim. The simplest explanation is that NASA can't really do all that stuff.
Again, the burden of proof is on both sides, as both sides make active claims. And also, are you really insinuating that the Flat Earth conspiracy is the simplest explanation?
Well, I can't possibly understand how NASA could possibly put a rocket into space, so I suppose the simplest explanation must be that the Earth is flat. Sure, all the other planets and moons are round, but you can clearly see that. On the other hand, it's much simpler that NASA and all the governments of the world have been keeping their global secret from billions for decades.
Or is it actually simpler that that would be pretty much impossible and that science actually works? Look, we've been able to engineer planes that can fly people faster than the speed of sound. An over 12,000 foot long suspension bridge designed to withstand earthquakes of up to 8.5 magnitude. And submarines that can take people over 30,000 feet underwater and withstand over 1 ton of pressure per square centimeter. In other words, humans have done some pretty amazing stuff. Is it really that much more of a stretch to think that we've built a rocket that could take us to space?
If two people are having a debate, should the burden of proof rest on the shoulders of the person who makes the most complicated claim, or should the burden of proof rest on the shoulders of the person who makes the simplest and easily observable claim?
Again, you're both making a claim, so you both have to prove it. Now they're going to give us some examples which just reinforce further that they don't understand skepticism. Okay, I'm running out of accents.
In a discussion on the existence of ghosts, should the burden of proof be on the group mumbling, "Just because you can't see something doesn't mean it doesn't exist"? Or should the burden of proof be on the skeptics to prove that ghosts don't exist?
The glaring error here is that a skeptic does not claim that ghosts do not exist. Just like someone who is skeptical that the Earth is round does not therefore immediately believe the opposite, that it's flat, someone who is skeptical that ghosts exist does not thus believe the opposite, that they don't exist. A skeptic says, "I don't think that ghosts exist," which is actually different from saying, "I think that ghosts don't exist." The second is still an active claim, which now requires you to disprove the existence of ghosts, which, frankly, is impossible. The first, however, is an expression of doubt, which says, look, I know I can't prove that ghosts don't exist, but there has also never been any compelling evidence whatsoever to show that they do exist, so I'm not convinced. It seems extremely unlikely, but I'm not going to claim with any certainty that they don't exist, because I'll admit that's not really possible. That's skepticism. There's another similar example I hope to cover in an upcoming video that I think might help clear some stuff up if you're still a little confused.
Another example. A company called Moore International claims to have invented a flying car with safety comparable to a land vehicle and an outstanding performance of 400-mile range and sophisticated never-before-seen computer control. They claim without evidence that the Sky Car is working a way to be mass-produced if only they got through more big investments. Should the burden of proof be on the Moore proponents, who are absolutely certain that all of Moore's claims are true, or should the burden of proof be on everyone else to prove most claims are not true?
The burden of proof certainly falls on Moore International to prove that their tech exists and works, though similar with the last example, it doesn't fall on everyone else to disprove their claims. It would still be perfectly adequate to say that if Moore International really hasn't bothered to back up any of its claims, and given that its proposed flying car technology seems pretty crazy and unrealistic given what other companies have been able to do this far, we would really recommend that no one pay a whole lot of money until Mueller can prove that it's a worthy investment. By the way, apparently this is totally a thing. The Molar Sky car has been in work in progress for years, is indeed computer controlled, did some short test flights, didn't have enough money to finish the project, and has now been trying to auction off the prototype. As of a 2017 article I read, there are no takers yet, though Molar is still optimistic.
The burden of proof is always on the claimant and never on the skeptic. The burden of proof is on you.
Yes, the catch is, you're not a skeptic, and the burden of proof is also on you. Thanks so much for sticking around, y'all. I hope you enjoyed that. Again, it is still up to the round earthers to prove that the Earth is indeed spherical, which I didn't bother doing in this video. So if you'd like a few proofs of Earth's roundedness, check out that minutephysics video I linked in the description. If you liked the video, I would appreciate if you actually hit the like button and consider subscribing to the Majestic Masiakasaurus YouTube channel if you like this sort of thing. I've got a ton of different ideas for the stuff I want to do in the future of this channel, including up next some more of that dinosaur hoax stuff if you find that entertaining. That's all for me today, so thanks again so much for watching, and I hope to see you all later. Peace out.